Welcome back, everybody, to Pioneer Tuesdays here at Card Art. We're getting round number 2 underway in just a second, and we got two more decks that one of them you probably have seen a lot, definitely if you're playing Pioneer more frequently for RCQ season, in Atarka Red. However, there's a different deck on the opposite side of it, and it's going to be one of our co-commentators, Kyle, playing something a little bit fishy.
Yeah. Simic Merfolk or Simic Fishy.
And it's going to be Kyle on the left playing the Simic Merfolk deck, and it's actually going to be John on the right who is going to be playing the Atarka Red deck. So maybe a little bit different than the straight up Gruul Prowess version. The Atarka Red deck might be trying to play a little bit more on the red side and not having the same kind of protection spells, but we'll have to see.
So actually, I believe I know what list John is on.
No. Give me the
Yeah,
beans. You
this
got
looks
you got
like.
all this inside info.
I saw one of our other players, Willow, playing this earlier, and seems to be the exact same sleeves. So,
Ah, okay, so that's what
uh,
it is.
well, looks like a normal mono red, a target red kind of opener. Kumano into dual prowess creatures, beating his opponent down. And looks like Kyle does not have a 2/2 to block with, but just a 1/1 and added a land to his hand with that Note Scout.
Oh, this is going to be another one of those games where I'm like, what does that Merfolk do again?
This caller, that oh no, it doesn't work. Okay. So that one stops like tokens and our non-tokens from like being blinked in, basically.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like the containment priest of
Yeah,
Merfolk, so to speak.
I believe he runs it as a one of as like a one drop in his deck. Unfortunately, does not stop the boogeyman of the format. Yeah.
But it does stop that Kamana.
It does stop that Kuma. Wow,
I didn't know that
I
would
did.
work.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's just going to be another attack coming in here from John and paying 2. Is this an Atarka's command? Is this going to be something a little bit different? It looks like just debating their options right now.
Yeah. So I believe John's also playing, of course, the big man of format Slick Shot show offs in his deck. So
Looks like
looks like I'm. Oh,
play with fire to the face.
okay. Just pushing it through a little damage while getting a Scry in.
So it is going to mean that that Soul Scar Mage is going to get buffed up by Prowess. So only 2 damage coming across here. So not the same explosive kind of turn 3, turn 4 kill you'd expect to see from this like Atarka Red Gruul Prowess style deck, but just enough to kind of control what Kyle's trying to put on the battlefield.
Yeah. So Kyle's life total is still at a pretty okay amount. He's not in any immediate danger from getting exploded by usually these explosive starts that a Tarkaret have.
Ooh, Sentinel the Nameless City. That one I know. I know that Merfolk.
It is an all-star, standard all-star.
Yeah, definitely powerhouse and standard. Gonna be making a bunch of map tokens whenever it attacks or when it enters. So Kyle's creatures could potentially get out of burn range, but ooh, there's the boogeyman slick shot show off.
Slick shot show. Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna Witch Stalker Frenzy away the Sentinel too, so no blocker. That gets a prowess, so that's 3 from Slick Shot, 3 from that buffed up Monastery Swift Spear, and 2 from the Soul Scar Mage. So not quite lethal.
Yeah. Looks like John pushing through a lot of damage, but I do believe he's out of cards in hand. Oh no, he has a few cards in hand. Okay. Let's see if Kyle can stabilize from this. It's not looking good.
There was 5 damage that came across. Kyle still does have at least 3 cards in hand, but one of them being a Spell Pierce. Actually, 4 cards in hand with a Spell Pierce there, so could potentially wind up getting like a monster stage, but just a passing of the turn. How many Flash Merfolk are there besides Frilled Mystic? I think was the one, the counterspell one.
There's a couple. I was a Harbinger of the Tides, I believe. Oh,
Oh, it's beautiful.
beautiful.
That's a Merfolk.
That is a Merfolk. And that is a play with fire.
Ooh, that's before blocks too. But Oh, and a blossoming defense to get rid of the aura on the slick shot show off. And Kyle just kind of shrugs there. John gonna be blowing out right there. That's a very powerful Atarka Red turn there.
Quick little story. That's also how I lost my win into top 8 at a Pioneer RCQ.
With an explosive game like that, and then
Yeah.
the blossoming defense at the perfect time.
Yeah, blossoming defense at the perfect time on the slick shot show off. You take a billion and they don't care.
So that was just a huge amount of damage that was able to come across from the fact that not only was Kyle trying to play instant speed at that point to try to catch John with not the right amount of spells in hand, but it just didn't pan out because John had the stack on his side, because every single spell John was using as a combat trick there, it's a prowess trigger on the Monastery Swiss Spear, prowess trigger on the Soul Scar Mage, and then super prowess on the Slick Shot Show Off.
Just took a billion from him casting one protection spell, and then John had actually quite a bit of removal to control Kyle's board from getting it out of control.
Yeah, so from Kyle's side, now that he is going to be on the play, what do we think is going to be coming in from this Merfolk deck?
Well, I know a Merfolk with protection from red. What is it called again? It's the devotion one. Tide Caller?
Oh, you're Master of Waves.
Master of Waves, yeah.
That would be something that would kind of gunk up the board with like a bunch of blockers against its Atarka Red deck as well. Master Waves you can't pull up on screen right now, but we will if we see Kyle kind of putting it in. But that is protection from red. You get a 2/1 for 4, which doesn't seem like a really good rate, but you get all of your elementals +1/+1, so it does buff up Mutavault. But when it enters, it makes 1/0 blue elementals equal to your devotion to blue. So you're just gonna be flooding the board a bunch of blockers, but those elementals don't jump, so they can't reach a slick shot show off. So what do you think John is going to be putting in to try to force through a little bit of extra damage here?
I'm not sure. Probably more removal spells.
I can think of one removal spell off the top of my head that targets white and blue creatures.
I can think of 2.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of those after
a
all.
lot of those.
So definitely looking at maybe some rending volleys just to kind of clear the board. The green part of the deck also is like for pick your poison and stuff, which I don't think is really going to be super effective in here. There's a lot of mono red spells in the sideboard of these like Atarka Red and Gruul Prowess type decks. A lot of extra spells. There could potentially be, if there's cards that are a little bit more dead from John's side, or if he thinks he needs to go a little bit bigger, if he anticipates this Master of Waves too, that could be something. You see more Rampaging Ferocidons come in, because you play the Master of Waves, you're like, great, I'm going to make like 6 elementals. It's like, great, takes 7.
Also, another card that I believe could be in Kyle's deck. It's Tidebinder or Tidecaller. It's
Oh, the Tidebinder Mage?
Tidebinder Mage. Yeah. What it does is that ETBs, it will lock down a green or a red creature for as long as it stays on the field.
So that's basically anti-slick shot show-off mage in this deck specifically.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful. I'm wondering if the Mistcaller stays in. We saw the Mistcaller in its probably best application that game to exile the flipping of Kumano faces Kakazan. So no etching came into play, and it did slow down John's clock there by at least 2 turns.
He also might just keep it in his deck because he needs more 1-drops, which is one of the things when I was looking into playing Simic Merfolk too, was the 1-drops are a little bit iffy in that deck.
That was also the problem with Merfolk in Modern for a while. It was just like, we just need good 1-drops in Merfolk and it could be great again. And now they have Dock Hand. They have a couple of different things. I know like the old, showing my knowledge of Merfolk here. River Glide something or other was a 1-drop 1/1 unblockable, and that was the only playable 1-drop that they had for so long from like that was original Dominaria Ixalan block standard.
Yeah, they have Tide Shaper now, which is spreading seas on a body.
Yeah, so we'll have to see here. Looks like Kyle did wind up taking a mulligan down to 6, denoted by the die. I do see the Mistcaller in his opening hand here, so that's going to be sticking around, but not going to be the one that he wants to keep here.
Looks
So
like does not Still wants to keep as many 1-drops as possible in his deck against his aggressive deck.
All right, and here we go. Cavern of Souls, Cenote Scout finds the land, and Kyle's shaking his head. This thing's never a 2/2.
We'll see. Well, not relevant right now.
This is very similar to game number 1 so far. Cenote Scout not finding a non-creature or non-land, and then Kamano coming down. So we'll have to see if it's a follow-up with the prowess twins again, the Monastery Swift Spear and Soulscar Mage.
There's Cenotes now. Another land. Do we see the Mistcaller in Kyle's hand?
No, he bottomed the Mistcaller from the mulligan, but it looks like there were 5 lands in Kyle's hand, and then 1 unknown Merfolk, it looked like, in the back. So these Cenote Scouts, at least getting rid of the lands on top, but not helping Kyle advance the board either.
Here comes the Swift Spear.
Oh, a second Kamano this time, but this is going to trigger prowess, so that's actually an extra point of damage compared to last game. So this will be 3 coming across.
John having an even more creature-centric plan this time with a lot of Kumanos and the Swiss Sphere.
Kyle might be thinking that he wanted that Mistcaller after all.
Well, it would only stop one of the Kumanos here, but yeah, it would have been nice to get rid of at least one of the 2/2 waste coming in at his face.
So 4 cards in hand for John. Kyle still has, I believe, 7 in hand, thanks to all those explorers. We know at least 2 of them are lands.
Tapping 2. Well, not tapping 2. Oh, pass. Oh, no. He's trying to read Kamano here.
I was going to say, he's got plenty of lands in hand. Yeah. I don't think he wants to actually not play one of those and pass. So Kyle looks like it might be attackers first. Can just attack with one of the Cenote Scouts, get a little bit of poke damage in on John's life total, but he's kind of just debating how he's going to deal with these Kumanos that are flipping. The Cenote Scout right now represents a second blocker, so if there's a play with fire or something, like, John just doesn't absolutely blow him out with like 6 or more damage this turn.
Flip. So Kyle decides to leave all his mana open. I do believe I saw a counterspell in his, or some kind of counterspell in his hand. So.
No, he has the same aura that he was trying to stop the slick shot show off with last game. Third Kamano. Whew.
Oh, Kamano Tribal out here. Another prowess proc, and John has another Kumano second chapter trigger. So see if he has another creature coming in. Kyle responding to the Kumano faces Kagazan.
So Kumano's still on the stack.
Yeah. It's the...
Eaten by Piranhas.
Eaten by Piranhas.
I would not be able to tell you what this card did, even if I knew the name of it.
Huh. I don't remember this card.
So it's basically just a sort of like a dress down and a witness protection put together. So it's a flash aura, and the creature loses all abilities. It becomes a 1/1 with base power 1 and 1. But then, so that coming in prevents the prowess being triggered on the Monastery Swift Spear. So it is going to reduce the damage from Kyle's. It's going to be taking from a little bit. So it's only going to be putting him down from 5 total damage down to 10. So that means these Cenote Scouts will stick around and potentially block another day. But now this needs to be followed up by something else, because Kyle's just kind of playing defense right now, and it's not going to win if there's any number of cards from John's side when this other Kumano flips.
No, the... Oh no, it doesn't. Okay. I was gonna ask if did you know if the Eaten by Piranhas removes the gained attack from prowess triggers, but I'm not sure it does.
It just loses all base abilities, so no prowess is going to be on that Monastery Swift Spear anymore, but it still has a +1/+1 counter from the Kamano when it entered the battlefield.
No, what I meant was like when you like all the prowess triggers from before, does it lose?
Oh, with the Kamano on the stack? I think that's why Kyle was responding, because he only wound up taking 5 that turn, which would have been 1, 2... No, it looks like he did wind up taking the extra damage from that prowess trigger still, because it was 2 from that flip Kamano, and then it would have been only 2 damage from the Swift Spear if that was the case.
Looks like blue-green's lack of removal hurting Kyle a little bit. Having to play eaten by piranhas. I mean, the card's good against like fat creatures, but might be a little hard against all these small creatures.
Well, this is a pseudo removal spell. This Tidebinder Mage is going to come in and it's going to wind up tapping down. It looks like that Kamano. So that's not going to be able to untap. It's another 2/2, so we can wind up blocking here.
And the play with fire targeting Kyle's face instead of the Tidebinder to unlock, which is looks like John's just trying to search for, or trying to smooth out his draws right now.
This could be signaling that John might not have any extra sort of pump spells in hand, but it could have potentially been just that he was not worried about this Tidebinder Mage because he has trample effects in his deck, and he's just going to try to trample over these other 2 creatures. And it does look like it, somebody in chat pointed out the other 1 damage that he took was from the Kamano when it entered. So not the prowess trigger, but the Kamano actually resolving. It's just on the top of our screen there, so it's a little hard to see. Just too many Kamanos, you know? Like, oh, a Witch Stalker Frenzy, and
oh, Dillian Hexcatcher. So Kyle's gonna start stacking some Cenote Scouts to make him to probably counter this Witch Stalker Frenzy.
That's a bit of a blowout there. So Cenote Scout does its best to wind up just kind of preventing the Witch Stalker's Frenzy from blowing up the single blocker. So that's going to be and it's actually also going to be a Lord effect. So now this Tidebinder Mage blocks profitably against this Kamano. That Cenote Scout, however, should be exiled because there are flip Kamanos on the battlefield.
But yeah, so Kyle swinging in with his Voldaren Hexcatcher, plays the land, and passes the turn back.
I think the Cenote Scout should be exiled from the Kamano.
Oh, yes. So, yeah, these are just exiled, yeah. Because,
quick correction on the Cenote Scout's placement, and
the backside says if creature would die.
if they're zoned.
This is why I sit on the outside.
Good catch, good catch. Reading the card, he explains the card. Yeah.
Creature dealt damage this turn by a source control.
Oh, it's only if it's dealt damage.
No.
Wait, oh yeah, I don't think they're exiled.
I don't think
Is it?
Oops, never mind. It didn't get dealt damage.
Yeah, there's no damage being dealt. Okay.
Small wrong call.
Yeah.
You're good, you're good.
Small wrong call, but we'll just continue on, continue on.
Yeah.
So,
That was a.
This is why I should stay seething.
so
I mean, still a profitable turn for Kyle last turn, keeping up his playing a tap land and keeping up his mana again. So playing at instant speed has helped Kyle quite a bit, catching John off guard with some of these tricks.
Yeah, and it's definitely a different kind of take from the Merfolk deck, because normally you would think, okay, Merfolk, it's like a Kindred style deck. It's going to be throwing down creatures, pumping the things up, and then you're so used to the modern version using Aether Vial to flash things in, but this Pioneer style doesn't have Aether Vial, so seeing a couple of different sort of tricks coming out from Kyle's deck to try to compensate for that. But this is a Monstrous Rage, which is a pretty powerful thing here, because that means that Tidebinder Mage is literally going to get run over.
Yep.
this is 3.
Kyle checking how much damage he's going to take from this. He doesn't have that much life to work with. Oh, and it dies, and
This is exiled.
gets he unlocks the other the third Kumano.
And just a follow-up Soulscar Mage after that, so a lot of things happening, and
Kyle draws some adventure card.
I'm wondering if that's just a straight-up Brazen Borrower. But it looks like 2 lands in hand, and then that card. So just plays the land. And there's the Voldaren. Voldalian Hexcatcher, not Voldarian, of course, because that would make things a little too easy if they were all named after the same places.
Of course.
But the Voldalian Hexcatcher only being a 1/1 right now, so any sort of pump spell here from John represents GG.
Yep.
Get in with everything. And before I'm gonna hold priority before blocks. I'm going to attempt to
Kyle classically cannot escape the mono red match or the aggro matchup, and he always dreads when his decks lose to these kind of just getting beat up by a bunch of prowess creatures and burn.
And this is a Witch Stalker Frenzy before blockers as well. So it declares attackers, makes this only cost the 1 mana.
Yeah.
And then Kyle just has to say GG. That's going to be John taking it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a rough.
It's, looks like a pretty rough matchup for Kyle. Just got had all his Merfolk, shot but to death by play with fires, and then monstrous rage, trample over, deal a lot of damage.
There's not a heck of a lot that you can do when the Atarka Red deck kind of starts firing on all cylinders. We saw him basically trying to do as much as possible, but then John also had a very unique sequence of cards where by playing the Kumano Faces Kakazans as opposed to playing actual other creatures, there were just pop shots of damage that were coming in, and this is very important for like these aggro style decks to like recognize. Having all those little pot shots of damage come in and start to add up over a couple of turns, by the time John was actually drawing the spells to get rid of the blockers or get rid of the things that Kyle was playing, there was only 10 life or something like that left over, because these Kamanos were being basically expendable attackers because of the number he drew.